Okay, sorry about that. I had to take the dogs for a walk this morning, and well, I wanted to take the dogs, not I had to, but I wanted to take them for a bit of a longer walk than usual. And then when I got back, I thought, I'll make myself some breakfast, and then realised I needed to get the stream started. So my breakfast was still cooking. So I now have a sandwich sat next to me, tempting me for the stream. So I might take a break in a little bit and do that. Okay, so yesterday I was working on my Kafka extensions piece and getting console per running. I have to work currently. My biggest suffering, the dog is bored. Oh, yeah. I keep the dogs away from me during the day because they just want to play, and I feel really awful about that. And I kind of want to figure out a way of having them in the room with me at least, so they can come and hang out, and even if they play, they can just run off and play. But our house isn't really built for that. Okay, so I do need to update the documentation here for this. Now, because this is a open source project, I really do want to make sure I kind of update this as best I can. So this changes to be that, right? This changes to be that, and this changes to be that, and that. And finally, that one changes to be that. So it's not perfect, but at least they're better. They're more correct, right? So yeah, so we have Kafka, we have an Outbox sample, add Outbox publisher using memory Outbox. So I'm going to work on today is to make this library actually useful. I need to get a SQL version of the Outbox working, because if I don't, then I can't really pull this library through, because the biggest value this library offers me right now is the opportunity to introduce the Outbox for Kafka, which gives me that little bit more stability. Well, that's what I wanted. I wanted to look at something as well. Something that caught my eye this morning. I wanted to, let me see if I can find it over here rather than. So I subscribed to Milan Jovanovic on YouTube, and he posts some things. Where is it? Where's his microservice? His modularity one. Okay. So I wanted to just kind of. My biggest suffering is I spent my paycheck way too fast this last paycheck. Morning, daughter. Yeah, It's bad when you're spending it before you got it. So I wanted to kind of just take a quick look at this. The The biggest mistake developers make with microservices using them for the wrong reasons. Microservices give you a clear strategy for modularity and decomposing the bounded context, but you can also achieve this without building a distributed system. The problem, people end up using microservices to enforce code boundaries. Instead, you can build a modular monolith to get most of the same benefits. So he's differentiating. So a distributed system, you can't be a modular monolith. Low coupling, high cohesion, data encapsulation, focus on business functionalities. I spent years perfecting the modular monolith architecture. So I wish there was a better quality image of this. Maybe there is. Milan Jovanovic. Maybe there's a better version in our newsletter. So bounding contents are huge. Yeah, but code base is a modular monolith. Your code base is a modular monolith. It's all in one code repository. So again, it's why I'm always concerned about putting labels on what I do or what anyone really does. Like the moment you start putting labels on it, people are going to judge it against an expectation. Right? They're going to judge it based upon what they consider to be that thing. And I'm interested to know. I use labels for that reason. Right. But again, pragmatic. I want to be share that in there. I need to start figuring out how to share both in YouTube and in Twitch. Maybe I can do a command or something. I mean, I'm not going to read this on the stream right this second, but it got me interested. So I wanted to share that for everyone. So mine looks, again, microservices, payments, reviews, users, notifications, disputes, bookings. These are all these are closer to what I have now, and that's called a microservice. I'd be way more open to the feedback outside work. Yeah. And I'm not. I don't think you're a microservice. I don't think I am either. Right? But the way that this is labeled suggests that these are interactive components that just are separate libraries that kind of work together. Microservice implies everything is in its own code repository. Again, the implication, what do people expect? What do people understand? Right? So I want to read over this a little bit more. I don't disagree necessarily. I'm not doing this to say, hey, this guy's wrong or this guy's well, I'm wondering what it would look like. That's why I refer to them as components, right? Because again, if you think of planning, it's a little larger than payments. Maybe my system right now, it's not as clear. Maybe as I break things out, but I kind of think of my components more of kind of available for this concept, right? So within a given grouping or context, right? Because these aren't, these are contexts, right? But it's just another perspective, and this one caught my eye. It's from earlier in the year. I saw it previously, but again, if I use the term modular monolith, then do I align with other people's expectations of what is a module monolith? Right. I'm not communicating with these with APIs though. I'm using a distributed system. Right. So modularity, I've got high modularity, but I've also got high number of, so it doesn't, this isn't a linear chart, I don't think. Yeah. I'm less coupled because in this example here, there, you know how we did, actually, you know how we did the API? No, that's the wrong one. That's a super secret project. That's not the project I want to do. Normally you don't need microservices when you don't have multiple teams. But again, it's kind of like, why don't you? Is that cognitive complexity? Why you don't need that? Because then if you're working on your own, you don't need to do microservices because you can actually manage everything in one big box. By that measure, I shouldn't even be building what I'm building here. I should just be building a monolith, right? Why is that text so tiny? 18. There you go. That's better. So I'm just using the opportunity to kind of just ask myself, am I following at least along with some other principles? Would other people be able to come into this code base and be comfortable? You have a lot of overhead when you do real microservices. You have to take care of resiliencies, deployments, monitoring, etc. You increase the complexity for what? Yeah, I should read some microservice books. I know where they are. I've just been my version of lazy. Yeah. Is that the overhead of microservices complexity, or do you reduce complexity? Well, for me, I mean, I don't. Yeah. I'm trying to remain on the. This is the way I feel comfortable building this application. I mean, your boundaries being wrong. The more I do it this way, the more I feel that those poor boundary choices stick out more, right? If you're building a monolith, right, or you're trying to build something similar, the boundary, it's easy to put the things in the wrong boundaries, but when you do this sort of things start to feel painful, and I think you need to listen to that. Because it'll stand out, like it'll feel wrong. There'll be some sort of interaction or some sort of data requirement that you have that doesn't quite sit right, and that's kind of ask yourself a question. That sounds awful, by the way, to butcher him. That is one that sounds more gruesome in English. Deployment is where you really feel it. I have to deploy these 5 things in this order. Ordered deployment is a big challenge, right? And again, I'm going to learn some serious lessons. It was intentional, okay? I have, meanwhile, 12 services under my hood on work. Oof. I'm going to find some good challenges when I get to the point of deploying this, right? I'm gonna learn some valuable lessons, and without good deployment and monitoring, it won't be possible. So there's things like I do want to do before I even get to deployment side of things. I want to get into more open telemetry. I want to get more logging. I want to learn more about deployment techniques, and find out what options I have available to me. Dog wants things. No worries, Canny. Thank you for contributing to the conversation. It's good to have smart people who with opinions that are able to contribute to this sort of stuff. It's always fun. So anyway, yeah, I wanted to bring up the modular monolith thing. It's I do feel that the risk of following along with people's guidance like this, right, is that you kind of you build to their expectation of what it is, but you also build to your understanding of their expectations, right? So the risk is that you get to a point and you don't know how to build beyond it, right? So at least with an architecture that I understand and I am comfortable with, and I understand the moving parts, right? Yes, this is a distributed system, and the argument is modular monolith is not a distributed system, maybe. And I'll read through that more to get that actual discussion afterwards, but at least with the architecture in the way I understand it, I know the moving pieces, I know the dependencies, I can react more to a change because I do know what I've done, right? If I'm following someone else's plan, if I'm following someone else's expectation and I hit that limit of, well, what do I do here? I'm kind of stuck. Or I then deviate from their design because now my design I don't understand the implication of what I've done, and now when it comes time to change, this design is now a kind of a Frankenstein's monster of technologies. So it is it's kind of important to try and make sure you understand what you're doing. But anyway, I'll evaluate that as I go forward and try to put the right label on things where possible, because as people come into the stream, it's going to be very important to make sure that I represent what I'm doing accurately. My chair is sat in a really weird place, so I'm actually sat facing this way and having to turn a little bit because my chair keeps rolling off and catching, and I can't get it. I can't fight it. So this is updated documentation to represent to okay. So I'm not going to worry about publishing packages because this is going to end up as a package, I think. We now have to do a SQL outbox for Kafka. So for this, I'm going to open my mediator outbox version because that does have a SQL implementation. Right. So the way this works is we configure an outbox and we tell it which outbox to use, and then the default publisher is good enough for now, right? So what happens is when we add the Outbox publisher, it actually kind of puts an implementation of the publisher in front. So you can see we set Outbox publisher, and then we add a transient Kafka publisher, and then we inject that one in the Outbox publisher. No, we don't. We do that in Outbox publisher. How do we do that? Using memory Outbox. There's a how do we do it? Outbox publisher, Outbox message, Outbox service. The Outbox service, maybe? Does that get a publisher? Outbox message, does it get an Outbox publisher? Oh, it gets a solid. So the Outbox service gets an actual solid implementation of Kafka publisher. So apologies. So this still has some work to do. Basically, what I wanted to do is make it a swap out replacement for the actual publisher. So in the main application, when I configure add mediator, that's mediator Kafka, we add the publisher here, and the actual application stack here, project, subscribers, publish, we inject the iEvent publisher, right? So the goal is that the Outbox publisher is an iEvent publisher, so it gets swapped out. The challenge with that is when you do it that way, that you then kind of have to not use the actual Kafka publisher as a publisher, right? So this is no longer a swap out replacement, but it's like, okay, how do I configure that? So in here with default publisher, sets up the Outbox publisher, and then configures this to be transient, and then we can use the Kafka publisher separate. So the only difference I would have here is we need a version of this, right? Oh, no, I didn't do today. We didn't do any stream advertisements. I found a fascinating stream the other day. Guy that does development of 3DO emulator. Abdullah, welcome. How are you doing? That font size reset, I swear. Sorry, I have the prompter up there, and the font size, I am certain keeps resetting. Yeah, it does. It gets reset. Okay. Let's see. Doing good. What's your stream about? Okay, so there's a few projects I do on this stream. This is my primary one. Yeah. So the problem is that I don't use Restream to get the chats together. So when you're chatting on YouTube, you don't necessarily see everything on the stream. When people chat in Twitch, because I stream to Twitch and YouTube at the same time, the pop-ups come up there, but that's unfortunate. I can't do much about that. The font and the code, if that's too small, I'm more than happy to increase that. Can I reset that to a more reasonable size? So, I work on two projects. The main project I work on is a project that I refer to as Liquid Sky, or Agile Project Management Platform, right? So this is a large application, distributed application using Kafka, Message Bus, SQL Server, and all sorts of other technologies that is aimed at being a the font size is, I mean, if the font size is too small for that, let me know. So 125 is a bit big for me, so I don't normally get any complaints, but we'll see. So this project is meant to be a project management tool as such. The way it works is I am designing out a system of breaking down software development into three primary categories: the ticketing side, so customer complaints and problems coming in; a planning side, which is project management stuff, which is for identifying requirements and gathering all that information; and then the story side, which is the focus of what work do we actually need to do. So I've been working on this for several months, and the idea again is one of, we have planning items. Planning items can have requirements added to them. Planning items should have requirements there. When you add a planning item, you can assign a project, etc. We're building out this right now. So this is the primary project. It's a large system. It's distributed. Again, I use a lot of Kafka, a lot of Message Bus, and it's a little bit more complicated. This is not open source. This is a closed source project, but I do a lot of the development on stream. You're more than welcome to ask questions, pass thoughts and opinions on it. The other project I work on is a little bit more friendly, and that is Water Drink Water, which is a stream, a project we only do on stream, and that is I do that on Mondays and Tuesdays normally, where I kind of work on the project on stream, but it's also available to anyone to want to contribute or take and check out. It's not a reference application. It's not a, hey, here's a good example of code. It's a, here's a project. What could we do differently to it? What could we add into it? And it's aimed at having discussion and also providing the ability for people who have not done things like PRs before, they've not worked as part of team before, right, to be able to contribute to and ask questions of if you want to, right? So that's the goal of that project. So two very polar opposites of software development. But as always, my stream is not about being productive on stream. It's about offering the opportunity to talk about software development, to talk about design, ideas, thoughts, opinions on software. And I don't mind diverting for a while to discuss software. So the code I do is just to kind of fill the void as such. So this is the kind of overview of the Liquid Sky project, the Agile project management platform, and kind of how it flows through. The client, and when it creates things, it goes through these APIs into these components as such. These are all different services with their own databases, and they publish information to Kafka, and then Kafka consumes it, and then they read databases over here with a GraphQL API, and the client is able to query from the GraphQL API. So the written data is not the same as the queried data. So today what I'm working on is actually an Outbox implementation for, that's driving me nuts. That seems interesting. How long have you been working on the project management project? About 6 to 8 months now, on and off. All the past streams are on YouTube. I do upload them there. There is an actual playlist for Agile platform. I think there's over 60 videos at this point. Yes, I am working solo on it. I've been a software developer for a long time, and this is something I care very much about. If it takes time, it takes time. But I do aim for this to be a real product, right? So I'm treating it as if. So that's why it's not open sourced. It is something I want to become an actual thing. So I want to push it as far as I can to do that. So we're at a point where we're kind of building some infrastructure components, working some things out, and then we kind of have bursts of, or I have bursts of, okay, well, now I've got to work on these infrastructure pieces, take the time to kind of stabilize the application. Don't worry too much about the speed at which I'm going. I'm not trying to just throw code in here. I'm trying to follow good practices and refactor when I identify problems. So it is taking time, but it will accelerate as some of the things come into sight, right? So again, like the requirements, you can add a requirement, and this might be notification should be visible, right? The notification should, and this is going to, the intention of this is to be a larger box, so you can describe it more. Should show on the screen. It should be clear and highlighted as notification, right? So the idea of these are, what will happen is, as you add requirements, you can build stories out of these things. How do you have the motivation to work solo on a project for that long? I usually get bored really fast when working on solo projects. I care about it, right? I do want to build this application. I believe that we spend a lot of time when we're working with software development projects that is just unnecessary stuff as developers. So, I generally find that projects that I love or I care more about, I tend to put more energy into and stay focused on. I have a goal for this as well, right? The goal is that I want to be able to deliver this to people like yourself, like be able to say, hey, here's an application stack. What do you think of this, right? So I have a goal. I have kind of these dreams of this project. Not to say I don't have other projects, right? That are also solo projects that are kind of squirreled away. I have, I keep a track of my games library. I want to work on that application still. I actually just came up with another idea yesterday, right? So solo projects are abound, right? So, how to focus, and yeah, Delta, like me, I squirrel projects. I want to get some more relaxation in. I want to be able to play video games a little bit. And one of the things I had as an idea yesterday was to hook up my Mr. FPGA that has my retro console games collection on it, like as ROMs, and allow stream redemptions to say, okay, we're going to play this game on this console, and that will then activate that and play that game. So I have lots of other ideas. But right now, this is the solo focus, and I want to get this to a good point. So, and also streaming helps, right? Having people that are interacting and trying to find these conversations, which is why I don't mind about the distractions. What are the steps that you take once you have an idea for a project? It depends on what it is. So for this, I did a lot of prototyping with technology. I tinkered with several different technologies to begin with. I experiment. I tend to experiment with new styles as well. So here I kind of not the main app. In this project, I kind of experimented with different techniques for coding. So that helps me engage as well. So I'm also learning something. So it's very important as you're building a project, not to just do things the way you've done them in the past, right? Build something new, try different techniques, different technologies, right? We started a lot of this, GraphQL. I've never had a really good reason for GraphQL, but as I started to build up these applications, I realized that these shouldn't be read-write APIs, right? These should just be write APIs. So as I add a planning item, right, it goes in here, it gets stored, it publishes to Kafka, and then this view database is actually optimized for the read. So I got to experiment with GraphQL a little bit more. Normally I've put GraphQL against the same database that I'm writing to, and that's not ideal, because the database you're writing to can be optimized for the writing, but the database you're reading from can be normalized and or denormalized heavily to make sure that the read is quicker. So taking the opportunity to experiment with that and play with that, and not be afraid to redo parts, right? So I start a lot of I generally do a bit of prototyping if there's new stuff in there. I'll then start to just kind of build the project out as I go. For this project, I do have some planning work. I never write a document. I kind of scribble notes. I'm not a great documenter, so I don't try and use that. All right. Let's see if this is logged in. Liquid Sky. So for this one, I do have a bit of a backlog of work, right? And I have been keeping track of actual work done. That one's actually finished now. Can you actually end these things? I don't think you can. So I do have a bit of a backlog of work to do. Right this second, what I'm working on is kind of infrastructure pieces. So although the core project isn't actually open sourced, I do open source pieces of that, and this is one of those pieces. So this Kafka extensions library is actually, I actually do open source this, and I'm building this out now to make it more useful for me to actually use. And also I have this mediator Outbox. So this is, again, a project that I open source this one I actually am using in the main project right now. And this is just, the code for that. And this is open sourced. So again, I'm kind of, as I go forward, I'm trying to plan where I need to, build what I can, backtrack a little bit, refactor, rechange. So, an experiment, right? It keeps it fresh. You keep learning, you keep growing. And, yeah. Once I get to a good point with the actual project for this one, because again, this is one that I can actually use, I will actually start to use the project itself to build the project, right? So I'll start actually tracking work that I need to do on the project in the project. So I'll start to test it myself and build it that way. And I mean that's a personal project, right? If you're doing this for work, right? If once there's an idea for a project, you really need to do a lot more brainstorming. I did do some. Let me just move this off screen because there's some of it that isn't appropriate for stream. Yeah, diving deep into the code, stopping yourself from diving deep into code is an important thing. I do unit tests, right? So I make sure that I'm trying to test the code as I go. Make sure that you're not just throwing code out there. So planning items and building actual component pieces that add value. I do follow I suppose it all kind of bundles in here. I do make branches. I do commits, right? So I have a full Git repository that I actually am doing. I'm saying, okay, well, this is a piece of work. Let me work on this. Now let me commit that and then push that and then do the merge for that so I can review it, right? If you start on a project and you just throw code out there, what you tend to do is you get a little bit afraid at some point of changing things because you've just been throwing code in there. So at least if you put some sort of structure to the work you are doing, it will aid in that. I can't really share. I have several different, I kind of write down rambling notes at times of things, but they're not really stream shareable, unfortunately. Yeah. What do you do when you face challenges, when you have to work some work that's outside your main specialization? Well, I would consider myself to be a very solid back-end developer overall, right? The back-end technologies make sense. I can work with them. I'm comfortable with them. This side of things, I am terrible at. Hi, Sorcery. How you doing? Good day. So I try and do my best, right? And I accept that I'm not going to be stunning at it, but I try and learn. And at every point, if you're learning something as you're doing a project, it will help you focus on doing the project, right? Don't try and do everything you've done before because it's easy, right? Try and push yourself, try and learn a technology that you've not used before, tinker with it, right? Don't be afraid to divert a little bit and do a sample project to kind of just get used to something, right? When we first started this project, I actually had Couchbase as one of the services was backed by Couchbase, the ticket system, which right now isn't functional, but the tickets was backed by Couchbase, right? And I got to a point where I realized the technology was good, but there were some challenges I was facing with it. And realistically, if I wanted to move forward with that piece, I had to just swap it out for SQL Server temporarily until I could come back. So sometimes you can walk away from that challenge. Sometimes you have to kind of work through the challenge and, understand when you're making a compromise. Don't assume you can't make a compromise, but understand when you are and what your alternatives are. And moving forward will sometimes help you stay focused on the project rather than getting stuck in the weeds. Doing good. How are things over here? Things are good. We're having a good conversation. I'm hoping to be a little bit productive. And Shy, hello. How are you doing? I still have my breakfast sandwich that I made sat beside me, tempting me. I made it right before I started streaming, and I didn't get a chance to eat it. So, and I don't like eating on stream, so I may take a break very shortly. Yeah, I'm doing okay. Okay. So, there's lots of effort in here. There's lots of different pieces, and as a solo developer, you have to kind of stay on task. Sometimes, and this is kind of an example of this, what I'm doing right now is I'm kind of procrastinating, right? I'm putting off a hard problem right this second, to be quite frank. I have a design question. Oh, no worries, Shy. Sorry to hear that. So, I have, recently I kind of introduced a project as a concept, right? So you can go in here and you can say, I need to put behavior in there if I'm going to make that workable. I can define a project, right? So I can go in here and I can say, okay, well, this is the sales, right? Now, again, project, we've kind of gone over this. Project right now is kind of, is it team? Is it project? Is it, what actually does it represent, right? And in organizations kind of use projects I know just from my experience with Jira, projects are used in different ways, right? So the project could be the software, right? So this is Liquid Sky, right? So this is Project Liquid Sky. and I create that, and it should go there, and there we go. Now, when I go to add an item, right, this is a new requirement. New requirements are great. This will work. Seriously, it will. And we've set that review date. So one of the concepts, again, in my application stack is that everything must have a review date, right? Because the idea is that data shouldn't, work should not get lost. Things should not just disappear off into the ether, right? Now this drop down here, this isn't appearing because Kafka's backed up somewhere, right? And this is kind of why I'm building this Outbox right now, right? My bet is, no, that's working. If I go back here, this is in the data store. This is stored locally. When I go when I go here to create a planning item, what this does is this is a query to the end, to the back end, to the GraphQL. Because of the nature of the system, again, it is good in so much that it does provide flexibility, and it does provide a robust feature set. But if information disappears, you have a debugging nightmare on your hands potentially, right? So did I store it, right, is the first question. So if we open Liquid Sky here, this window. So if I go to planning items, no, tenant management has projects, right? So I go here, there's my project, right? Now you can see there's actually 7 projects here, but only 4 appear in the actual application. And the reason is that some of these didn't get through published. The idea is that, oh no, there we go. It got there, it just took its sweet time. So the problem here is one of loading, right? I don't reload this list. So when that project gets added into here, right? Because tenant management is kind of an oversight, an overarching project, right? It's got concerns that everyone needs. So projects will exist at planning, projects will exist at ticketing, projects will exist in stories. The same project should exist, right? So tenant management kind of owns that for now. When that project gets added into that API here, it publishes a project integration event, which is, hey, by the way, this project got added, or here's the current status of it. It doesn't actually tell you it is added. GraphQL side over here, there's consumers listening to this project, this topic, and it consumes it and then stores it in its data store. So that when this client comes up, it can go and query that. So the problem here is one of this query fired the first time, but never fired again, right? So if I reload the page and go into there now, I should have Liquid Sky. So the problem I am putting off right this second is, my idea was initially that when you assign a project will give you that identifier. So again, if you go and look over here, I do this kind of prefix. So that'd basically give me like LS001 for that planning item. But the problem is, when I assign the planning item, I don't want LS001 to appear in planning, and then when I create a story for Liquid Sky, a story to have LS001 or LS1 or whatever, because then I don't have uniqueness. So I need to maintain a unique identifier for that. So then what do I do? Right. how do I achieve that? So I'm kind of deferring that decision right now while I think about what projects really represent, right? What does it mean to be as part of a project? Is it a label or is it an actual thing? Do I need a friendly identifier? I think I do. I think a friendly identifier is useful, and I think a friendly identifier that identifies the project or the thing that it's associated with is definitely a useful thing. I just don't know. I don't know how I want to tackle that right now. So I am procrastinating, right? And I'm procrastinating by building out these extra features. So this library, this Kafka extensions library here, I've built deliberately to support the main project, but I haven't pulled it in yet because it's a bit more complicated, right? This mediator Outbox version I do use, right? I use this library in my application. And what this does is when messages publish internally to a component, there's a SQL backed outbox so that their processes can be handled independently as well. So that's one more of transactional security. So if things don't get committed, it will break properly. That helps me with that. So I am building this Kafka Outbox. I've added configuration for console. That's one piece that will be coming shortly. So when I go into here, all my topics can be listed in one place, and every project can pull from this place rather than having this copied and pasted into every single application that uses the Kafka pieces. So there's some benefits there. I wonder if I could use, if I did build a game, I wonder if I could use Kafka to do something. That'd be kind of fascinating to be able to distribute data. I wonder if that would work. But anyway, that's a whole different thought process. So yeah, if you're new to the stream, you're more than welcome to ask questions. You're more than welcome to. I'm more than happy to discuss pieces of this application. The stream is definitely not one about productivity. It's about the software development journey. So I'm always happy to talk about this stuff. Don't know if it ever was. Try it, but don't let that stop you. There's some very fascinating benefits of using this sort of technology, right? Because again, what happens here is disconnected from over here. So like, were you a backend developer ever since you began working as a software engineer? I don't know if that was. Not really. I've done a lot of different things. So I've been a developer for 25 years professionally. I started working in business systems and doing analysis, and was working, I was working in text-based systems, so there was no real back-end versus front-end. It was kind of all the code. And I kind of moved into things like PHP, and I did some Oracle stuff, and I've done a lot of different things. I did mobile development for over 5 years, building applications for in-field applications, so for rugged devices. So I think if anything, most of my career has been focused on solving problems, larger scale problems, and coming up with solutions for that. So I'm more of a generalist than I am anything else. So I'm able to work in the front end. I'm able to work in the back end. I would not call myself a full stack developer because I think that is, I personally feel that is big set of shoes to fill in today's world. But I am generally good, or generally acceptable, I would say, pretty much every area of the software development stack. No worries, Sorcery, thank you. I don't have a alert command yet. I probably do need to do some stream administration, get some stuff into YouTube as well. While ads are playing in Twitch, I'm just going to take a very quick break. I'll be back in 1 minute. I'm back. Sorry, I was getting very hungry. I really needed to eat my sandwich, so just very quickly ate. Probably not very good for me to do it that way, but whatever. It was a very good sandwich. Okay, so what do I need to do here? So what I'm going to build now, this is not really ideal. I'm building this out in the wrong way. I need to build a class library, source, and this is tbd-develop.kafka.outbox.sql server. Okay. So this got complicated last time, if memory serves, but it did. We did get it working pretty well. The only challenge I have right this second is this: the table name is not configurable. That's one thing I want to tackle for the future. So what this is going to end up being is pretty much identical to this. Rumbling Geek, thank you very much for the 5 months. I appreciate it, sir. Hello. Hope you're well. Good afternoon. It's annoying because I've got the prompter, but things like the sub, like using StreamerBot, it actually does tell me resubscribe, but I actually have to go there to see the message. So one day there'll be a perfect solution for this streaming thing. The prompter was a good investment, though, without a doubt, and the camera. So yeah, what I need to do here is I need to kind of create a version. It's going to look very similar. We won't be able to buy more gear then. True, if the perfect solution exists. So this isn't going to look too different. And what I need to do is I need to implement the iMessage Outbox interface, right? That's what I'm trying to do. So I might take this off screen and basically copy in the pieces I need until I actually get. All right, come on. There you go. So obviously there's going to be a need for a context. There's going to be all sorts of other things. The benefit of this is I'm gonna go with Veli just to try and save myself there. Veli. Are you using the very default SQL? I'm not quite sure what you mean by the very default. In which part? And hello, by the way. In my main application right now, I'm using SQL Server. I have Docker, and I have SQL Server in Docker, and I'm using that with one server right this second, with each database broken out. So each component of the system has its own database. But I'm more than happy to talk about it more if you want to clarify what you mean by default SQL. So let's go over here. So Outbox storage. iMessage Outbox. Outbox message. In-memory message Outbox. So post, retrieve, commit. Okay, so for the mediator version of this, I used a slightly different design in that I kind of broke storage out as its own concern. So the Outbox injects no. I have the Outbox and then the storage. Sorry, I couldn't move away quick enough to get that cough. Something just got in my throat. Okay, I broke storage out from the Outbox so that if you look, this does post and retrieve, and so commit is mark that record as completed, by the way. Once I get the Outbox implementation dealt with, then the rest is handled by the actual service, right? So there's only one service, right? I just need to implement the Outbox. That's the benefit here. And again, the purpose of building the Outbox is so that when I do a Kafka publish, again in here, when I go into here and I go to publish, this publish async, what will happen is this iEvent publisher will be replaced by my Outbox publisher. It just because it's that interface, right? So when I configure the project, I'll say, okay, actually use the Outbox and use SQL Server Outbox. And what will happen is instead of going straight to Kafka, this message will get stored into a SQL database. If that works, fine. Another service will run in the background that will say, oh, do I have any messages to process? Yes. Okay, that needs to go to Kafka. And it will only mark that record as done when it actually successfully gets the acknowledgement back from Kafka. So I'll be disconnecting my application from actually, so the interface will look like it's going to Kafka or whatever my event publisher is, right? But I won't have to worry about that disconnect. So if Kafka is unavailable or not quite ready yet, this system will allow me to store that message and wait upon getting access to Kafka to process it. So it is a challenge, but it is also one of the benefits of this type of architecture, in that, I do have the ability to bring a system down. If messages aren't processing for a while, that's fine. But I can bring components of the application stack down. I can update them. I can change them. I can deploy bug fixes to them without the rest of the application caring very much, right? So I could bring down the view side if I have enough caching and handle that here. I could bring down the view side temporarily and replace it, right? I could bring down the search aspect. I could bring all sorts of components down. Ultimately, I'll just need to deal with the fact that, okay, I need to indicate to the rest of the system that system is unavailable. So maybe I have some sort of availability process that I just publish to say, hey, shutting down, by the way. And when it shuts down, it tells everyone, oh, by the way, this is unavailable. So you might not be able to add a planning item for a few minutes, etc. I can build that into the architecture, into the design, and give myself a lot of future stability. But what I'm doing right now is if Kafka was unavailable and I go and add a planning item, right, that planning item is never going to make it to my view. It shouldn't get lost though, just because Kafka's unavailable. So it will store it to the Outbox, and then when the Kafka becomes available again, that will then publish that planning item and go through. So that's kind of what I'm building this for. So let's create a SQL Server Outbox, right? So that's the in-memory message Outbox. We're going to create a SQL Server Outbox. And I'm finding this is a problem with Rider. This application is not running, right? This one is. This one thinks it needs to apply changes. So I'm assuming that bug will get fixed very soon. Right, so this needs to introduce iMessage Outbox, right? So this needs to now reference the Outbox project, and now needs to implement those calls. Right. We then need and again, I'm just looking over to the other side just to see. We need a context, that's for certain. We're going to need entity framework. Entity framework. SQL Server. It will implicitly install Entity Framework Core. And I think I'm going to need, so the reason I've got the Outbox, the mediator Outbox on the other screen is I did figure out how to make sure that when the application starts, it will create the table. That's an important challenge. Yeah, okay. again, if you have any questions, thoughts, opinions, if you've done this sort of thing and you know that I'm going to hit some pitfalls here, I'm more than willing to learn, right? I do not believe that I know everything about this. You know, Outbox DB context, models. Let's have a look. Outbox message here. Outbox message. So, Outbox message. Do I need to worry about my Outbox message? I'm just questioning. I'm just having a look and making sure that I see the a look at the because I think I did this before I did the other one. Notification outbox. Outbox storage. It's bugging me that the I think it's just I broke up storage and not storage, like retrieval and processing into separate interfaces last time. Whereas right now, the way this works is my Outbox service is going to retrieve the next message. Again, it'll process them serially. It's a single-threaded piece. It'll publish it. If it manages to publish it, it will commit it and mark this message as processed, right? There is a potential this could publish and fail. And ultimately this calls the Kafka publisher, right? So that's calling this method. Yeah, so what is the difference between, let's create Outbox message. The Outbox message is public int ID, public string type. So because all sorts of different messages are going to come through this, right? You need to serialize this to be able to store it. I'm not creating a table for every type of message. I'm creating one table for all Outbox, which means I need to store the actual object. To be able to send the message later, I need to be able to deserialize it back from that string into the right type. So I need to store the actual full type name. The system will have access to the types. It's not like this is going to go into a different it could go into a different service, right? I could run a separate service, but I would need access to this assembly to get the types. So right now I'm assuming that the service that runs the Outbox will actually have a background process running that will process the Outbox. I might find that kind of challenging because once I actually implement this into Liquid Sky, into the actual project, that will live here as a background service, right? So the application, I'm always scared of running more worker processes inside of my API, right? But people do it a lot. I do have the potential later to create an actual service that would be the Outbox processing service, which would do the sending, the actual publishing, which would then disconnect this. But for right now, it will create a worker service in here, and the mediator Outbox, right? Use SQL Server Outbox. So this API is going to look similar for Kafka. Use SQL Server Outbox, add Outbox monitoring service. So again, this service runs and it checks every 10 seconds. And if a message fails, it will back off and wait 10 seconds, up to 2 minutes per message, right? So if it throws an exception at all, right? So this will this will go. User connection string, but again, I don't have access to the table, which would be nice. I'd love to configure the table here. So I need a type. Public string content. This is the actual message body itself, right? And public date time they added, and public date time date processed. So a commit will mark that as null because we'll actually have a query to say, okay, go get me all messages that don't have a date processed, and we'll process them. So SQL Server Outbox, we'll worry about the actual implementation afterwards. Let's go back to that context, and this is a DB context options of Outbox. DB context options, DB context options. What don't you like there? It's just fine. That works. Oh, Outbox message. No, I don't want to call it Outbox message, do I? I've kind of blurred the lines there. This is the actual message itself. Yeah, this one is not Outbox message. This is let's go with stored message right now. Let's go with that for right a second. Not the greatest name. Message to process. That sounds like a that's a terrible name. Sounds more like a variable than it does an actual name of an actual class. So let's do, this is Outbox message content. That's better. Not perfect, but better. We're then going to add an extensions folder. Service collection. It's not service collection extensions. It's Outbox configuration builder extensions. Static, public static Outbox configuration builder. Use SQL Server Outbox. So this is going to need a little bit more. We'll get to that in a minute. Might not actually. So if we follow the same pattern, string connection string, why would that be nullable? That shouldn't be nullable. That's nullable my other. So I'm going to find something later on that's going to be. Oh, by the way, that should have been nullable. So So the builder here, I'm extending this, right? I'm not extending the service collection, because if I extend the service collection, I don't have access to this. So I'm extending this. So the problem there is I don't now expose the service collection, but I also need to say, hey, by the way, you need to register these other dependencies, right? So what I'm going to do, and I've done it on other things, right, is Outbox configuration builder register, and this takes a I believe, let me I'm just determining what it is. Yeah, this takes an action service collection, iService collection configure, and then we basically say configure services, return this. So what that allows me to do now is, over in this side of things, I can say builder.register, and now I can do services goes to, and now I can still register all the dependencies and pass that down the line. So back to what I was actually doing. Hey guys, are you aware you're currently watching a broadcast, and it's one of the best Outbox implementations? So how are you doing? It's been a while. Hope you are well. Mr. Jones, how you doing? Hope you have just been busy. Staying focused on that growth and learning. So we're going to do services dot, and now this is going to be add DB, pool DB context factory, and then we're going to do Outbox DB context. I don't think there's much to do here, so do. Oh. I'm fine. I was away for a while after you got sick. Oh. Yeah. Hopefully, good away. I am almost better. My voice doesn't sound too bad anymore. I'm still fluctuating a little bit more than I would like, but I'm free of the cough for the most part. Touch wood. 6 weeks. And then we're going to register the implementation. So do I want transient here? This is a tough one. I don't want to create an instance every time. I see things are going great now, right now. Building, things are progressing. Application is coming along a little bit. You know, things are starting to come together. Working on projects, etc. Working on some procrastination right now. But yeah, things are moving along. Transient versus scoped going to make much of a difference here? I don't think it is. This Outbox is going to be called in the publishing component for the most part. Let's figure it out. So this is going to be I message outbox is going to be SQL Server outbox. What do we do here? We just register outbox service. So I was configuring that. That gets added all the time. Add outbox publisher. It feels like I've got more to do. Implementing this is going to be a challenge, by the way. Actually swapping it out in the actual main application, but I think it's at the point where this is a good change to make. I'm just thinking through the moving parts here. So I'm going to need to do this. This is fine. This is going to need an IDB context factory of outbox DB context. There's not a lot of unit testing I can do here. A lot of this relies upon the SQL Server. I could do some integration testing, but it's not something I've done much with, and I think that would be poor. Actually, on that topic, I did actually do an integration test for this one. There is actually a test, and what this does, it was actually kind of fun. This starts this uses test containers, so it starts a SQL Server test container, runs the actual host builder and tests that it can actually create the SQL Server DB, and then it can write to it and retrieve that message, and then it shuts down and it deletes the thing. So you kind of see a container appear in here and then disappear, which is really nice. So I might aim for doing that again, just to verify that the actual SQL Server outbox will generate and create a message. But either way, I will also learn Angular and Blazor and WebAssembly. I still can't decide which one to start with first. Sorry. No cough. So I don't know if you've checked on water, drink water. Several features in there. We've got now there is a bit more functionality to it. Blazor's still, the Blazor WebAssembly stuff in there is still going pretty well. I don't think I'm going to be accused of being a massive Blazor fan anytime soon. I still have my reservations, but that's going pretty well. And on the Angular side, this is starting to become quite complex. I've been using the signal store and trying to lean into a little bit more reactive stuff on the client side. So there's a lot of different pieces to pick up. And honestly, at this point, I don't know which way I'd recommend. I think Blazor would be quicker to get up and running, but again, still has some challenges. So yeah, I'm not sure. Okay, so I need to implement basically this. I don't need outbox message. This is useless to me. Outbox message. I need to return it as that. I don't need to store it as that. Okay, it's not useless. Okay, I get it. I know how this code works now. I figured it out. I know what I'm doing. I'm a professional. Make it up as you go along. So post async is the save, right? Why I call that post async, I have no idea. Seems like such a janky API. Post async. Am I thinking of it as like a mail message? Will there also be an inbox implementation here? I stayed away from the project. Inbox at this point, no. Inbox will be a little bit more involved. Potential for it? Yeah. Odysseus, hello, how you doing? I'm going to leave that as post async, even though it doesn't make sense. I probably was leaning into the whole mail messages thing. I do. You have been here before. Welcome back. Hope you are well. So here now, what I need to do, this is a little bit more involved than the in memory, right? Because the in memory, all I'm doing is just storing into my Outbox so Outbox here is just a dictionary. So this doesn't the in memory Outbox really only works for testing, right? So that things can be validated test wise, but it's not really functional as an actual Outbox. This actually needs to persist these records. So using var context equals, let's start making things asynchronous. Await factory. Right, so we get a context, the token. Oh yeah, we go await. If more than one service is running and more than one message is broadcast over the outbox, you can process the same message twice. Right, but only one service will be running per project right this second. I could introduce a lock if I needed to, some form of some semaphore or some lock. I could do that. So when I retrieve, I lock and wait. But yeah, you are right. If I was running multiples of these services in a single piece, because don't forget the data store is what's going to determine that thing. I could scale out the processing. This does, by creating the outbox, it does actually create a scaling issue for me because you're right. If I disconnect the service. How would I tackle that? You're not wrong. Right now, I don't need to worry about it. It is a problem for later, but it is a problem. If I scale up if I put the processing of the messages into the API layer as a background service, right? And then I scale my API, I have now two processes running they will both reach out to that database and both try and process messages. So I could send the same message twice. Absolutely. How could I avoid that? And if I don't allow that, if I just make it so that the service can be broken out and run as a separate piece, then I have a throughput problem, right? Because if the system gets busy, the same message can be sent more than once. There is no problem with that. Processing the same message more than once may cause problems. Well, you have to deal with idempotency. You have to deal with, because again, I'm using Kafka in this context as a state change, right? So it's on me to determine whether something needs to be processed. So that's something I should always allow for, even if it's not theoretically possible. But you have got me thinking now about how would I tackle that challenge, because it is something I should consider, because the scale out of the actual publishing of the messages should still be available, right? I shouldn't actually just say, okay, well, once you use the Outbox, you're kind of constrained. Now, I won't see it, even if I get this working, right? I won't see that problem until I actually say, hey, you know, my planning API, and it's a good problem to have, right? It might be, even if I get this to a product and out to market in the next year, it might be another year or two before I even hit that problem where my scale would actually need to grow that much, where I have to have multiples. But yeah, it's something worth considering. It's something that I shouldn't forget, because how does... What I'd have to do is I'd have to lock the data table. I'd have to lock, so I'd have to change my read method and aggressively lock, and then write back a token or something to say, hey, I've got this record. So no two processes, so the processes would just be constantly colliding in that. That would be a way of doing it using the SQL Outbox. It might be that I don't want to use SQL Outbox for that sort of scenario. Maybe I actually want to use something a little different. Maybe there's a better way of doing that in that distributed environment. But yeah, thank you for the thought-provoking addition. Though, you know, these are the challenges of distributed computing. These are challenges, like you think it sounds simple, or you think it is simple, and you just have to go forward. And kind of learn some of these lessons. I did put streamer mode on Discord, and the bloop bloop blooping is annoying me. Okay, so for right now, I'm not going to worry about it, but yeah, it is something I need to consider for the future, and it will pose a challenge. A more aggressive read mode might actually help, in that I can pull a message, but I'd have to be able to then mark a record as done. The challenge with that is, if I put this database into the same database as my actual application, I could also cause some locking issues there, which would not be good. If this gets high frequency, you'd be constantly going lock, 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 and things could be colliding everywhere. So understanding the server behavior there will become ever more important. So we're going to get context, and then the context is going to have a we need to post a new message. So this isn't going to look too different actually to my other one. So I'm just going to go over and see what I did there. So SQL, Outbox, storage, retrieve, build, commit. So all we're doing here is await context.outbox messages.add async. And again, I'm only using the other thing for the purpose of I've done it. It's not like it's outbox message content. It's not like I'm cheating and copying and pasting. Type equals. Oh, hold on. It's going to help me out here. This matters. This matters, by the way. When you're doing this, if you do just this, all your objects will be serialized with with Pascal case. And then when you go and process it on the other side, things don't necessarily work the same way. So this will trip you up time and time again. I wish I could say I've not done that before, but yeah. And then we're just going to await context.save changes async cancellation token. So that's the post that will now save to the data table. Retrieve is another challenge. Retrieve here is a little bit more involved because basically I pass this outbox message around, right? I don't just I don't take the type out of the table. I abstract it to something else that's more usable throughout, right? So this has an identifier, the added on, the event, etc. Which is a good point. Do I need to store more information here? Message to identifier. So yeah. I need a bit more information on this one. Public GUID identifier. So again, I pass around the unique identifier of the object. And apparently in this, I chose to store, unless that's just GUID for this. Do I intend that to be post async? What did I pass in? Just build that for uniqueness. That's just for each message. That's so that I can reference this particular message afterwards. Okay, that's why I do it that way. It's so that, because later on, I don't want to have to deserialize this again to go and say, hey, by the way, this is the ID, find this object that matches this, or track that internal ID. I have an identifier that's attached. So that's all I'm doing there. So for the purpose of the add, to do it that way, I just need to do identifier equals GUID.uGUID, right? So for the purpose of the add, that's fine. Now, when I pull this message out, I'm going to use that identifier, and then I can refer to it again. And now I can build an index on that and just use that identifier to update the object. So I don't have to do any matching or some sort of craziness afterwards. Because again, in this world right now, it's kind of serial. So it wouldn't really matter. I could just take the last message I processed that wasn't processed and say, yeah, do that one, because that's the way I pulled it out. But this way I can go straight back to that record and mark it as done. And this way, even if I did implement some sort of distributed method of processing later, so that retrieve next message was more scaled out, that this method will still work. So I'm going to leave that in place. So retrieve message is going to be, we're going to do this again. So in the interest of time, let's do that. And then var message equals, let's see if it knows. It knows, right? So I want to get the where the date processed is null, because those are the ones I haven't processed, and order by date added, so I get the most recent message. No, yeah, I get the oldest message first, right? I don't want to process the newest message first, because a message could come in that changes an earlier message, so I want to publish them in the order they actually came to me in. And again, another challenge of if I distribute this in any way, shape, or form would be that this would now be a challenge, because I'd have to figure out, again, to the idempotency point, right? Now, currently the way I'm using Kafka, I have one topic and I have one partition per topic. You are guaranteed date time ordering within a partition. So every message I put into Kafka is going to come out in the same way. Once I need to scale out, once I need to grow the application, I need to build bigger topics. So if I have 6 or 7 or 8 or 20 partitions per topic, I'm no longer guaranteed that the message will come out of time. So I do need to make sure that when I go to the actual storage of things, I need to say, okay, well, does this message earlier than my last updated? If it is, discard it, right? So I need to start going through and doing that sort of stuff. There's so many different things to start concerning yourself with when you start to play around with distributed stuff, but it is the benefits will outweigh the gains eventually, but it is the benefits will outweigh the pains eventually, but it is still a challenge to overcome. So with the message, now the problem is, actually this might work almost identically to what I have. Let's see if this is almost good enough. So this is a Outbox message content, and this is going to be return message is null, otherwise build Outbox message. So if we've got a type for the so if we haven't got the assembly loaded for the type that we just pulled out, then this would be null. So this is just going to go, nope, I don't have a message to process. If we do, then we deserialize it and we attach the type. So now it's deserialized as the correct type, which again is why we store the type as a string in there. And we use the serializer options because we want the same back and forth, right? So now activate the create instance type of. So what is that one? This is an outbox message. Make generic type. So we're going to make an outbox message of T. That's going to give us our T event. And now this is a message that is the right type. And we're going to pass in make generic type arguments. Whoa. T event. Hold on, I just want to make sure that. Yeah, I was going to say that's. Let's do it this way. So the outbox message needs to change a little bit. So we need to do identifier, GUID identifier, date time, they added. And I forget this is not a record. I'm not building a record here. And now this might break other things, but it's fine. They added an event. This is just for the sake of making this, GUID.new GUID and datetime.utt now. Yeah, nothing else breaks there. That's fine. So with that there, now we can construct this, because what would have failed there would have been, this wouldn't have, because the create instance takes these arguments, right? So now we're passing that information in there, right? So content here is the object. It's really the event. Let's make sure that's clear. And then we're returning it as an Outbox message type, right? So you can, so the actual the service gets an Outbox message type. It then goes to publish the message, which it knows it can get the type. The reason it's got some more generics here is because if it doesn't call publish async with this generic properly, it will just kind of send it as an object, and that causes all sorts of problems. So there's some extra loops, some extra hoops that have to be jumped through there, but it's kind of necessary. That's fine. SQL Server Outbox. So that's the retrieve. So we've got the post and the retrieve, but now when we need to mark that record as done, we now need to go in one more time. And I'm running out of time today. Again, if you're new to the stream and it looks like there's a few people in here, I mean, I appreciate those of you that are hanging out and lurking with me. But if there are newcomers to the stream that haven't been in here before, I'm always happy to talk about the project. This project is closed source, but I do a lot of development on stream, and I'm more than happy to discuss and to describe. This particular piece I'm working on right now is open source. I do share this because I think this is, if people like the ideas, you know, you're more than welcome to go and use these pieces for yourself, or even tackle, you know, other challenges that you feel that I'm missing, right? For the education alone. So I like that emote. That's a good one. So yeah, if you're in the stream, you're wondering what I'm doing, you're more than welcome to ask. So again, I can actually use this Outbox message identifier. So I can actually say, okay, now I can get that message, bar message equals await. Why don't, oh no, let's make sure that's there. So we're going to go and we're going to get the singular default for that identifier. Again, we can add an index. I spent the last weekend doing a bunch. I may have overdone it a little. Investing in the stream is not... I don't do enough of it. I think it's important to do. So I think the emotes are awesome. I personally, I think you and I are kind of alike in that I think you feel that that isn't productive towards the project you're working on, because you do a lot of that work off stream as well. So I always feel bad when I do anything that's outside of the project stuff, because I'm like, oh, I could have been doing that instead of tinkering with like adding a bot or doing that. So yeah. Yeah. So date processed, and then context dot, so await context dot save changes, I think. It's not a redundant jump. If it's null, I don't want to do anything. Yeah, so that should now commit. So those are the pieces required. So the next piece for me to do here would be to create the migrations. That's going to be a little harder. So I'm going to need a sample program. Yeah. Going to need a sample program for that, and have to be a little bit more creative. I don't think I'm going to be able to do that today, though. So we've got a SQL Server Outbox implementation. That's working. Right now, everything's on main here because I don't need to worry about... I'm being a little bit less rigid on this project because, again, I need to test this and make sure it's working. And then the next step will be to build the packages, which will take days to get through NuGet, potentially. I've had to wait many hours in NuGet before, so I might have to publish packages to my local baguette server. But then the project, I'm going to go through every single aspect of this project and pull out all the Kafka stuff and replace it with this new version. I'm going to use the console stuff, so I only have to set the configuration for the topics once in here. And again, it's in the name of, just because I've got so much code, I shouldn't be intimidated by changing things, right? Building better things, and having this library in there gives me a lot more resilience. It does remove an ability to change things, but I haven't changed anything on these Kafka pieces in literally months. So at this point, I think that putting these new Kafka pieces in is the better move, and to then start stabilizing those. And that way, as I grow the project even further, I can rely upon those tools without having to worry about my slight implementation differences. So yeah, it's these are the challenges of software development. And again, I stream this because I stream this large application because I think it's worthwhile seeing, and I'm always happy to talk about it and discuss. So what's next? So I'm going to see if I can get the rest of this tightened up and maybe start to implement it in the main project. I'll have to get the packages published, etc. If you're interested in following along, there is a GitHub that should post. Yeah, it goes into both. Nice. I got StreamerBot to actually do commands, so it publishes both to Twitch and to YouTube at the same time there. So these libraries, the Kafka extensions and the mediator extension, or the mediator Outbox stuff, are on my personal GitHub. And the Water project is on my on the TBD Friends. So things we do on stream together, projects that are helpful. If someone comes to the stream and says, "Hey, how do I build this?" or "How do I write this?" and we actually create a project for it, I'd put it into TBD Friends, so it's there for prosperity. So yeah, that is going to be it for today. I will be back tomorrow, where I will continue to work on whatever I haven't got finished off stream today. Not always a lot, because I don't get a lot of actual time to develop outside of the stream right this second. But the goal is by the end of the week to be able to move back to doing the project stuff and kind of figure out, what do I actually want to do for do I want to introduce the projects as a hard piece right this second, or do I just kind of make it an association right now so I can kind of filter and worry about the whole readable identifier thing later, once I've started to flex projects a little bit more and see how they fit in the larger scale application. So this is a procrastination piece that does benefit me in the long term, but does also mean that I can give the right consideration to the projects that I need. So we are going to raid over to Nicky B Hobbying because I love his game, and there are no dev streamers that I can see. Although I am always open to suggestions. Dev streamers in application dev streamers, right? I'm one of the very few. I think I'm one of the very few .NET developer streamers, other than One Lion and yeah, I'm not reading Primogen. Thindle, and I'm sure there are more, but at this time of the day, not many. So let's go raid Nicky. Thank you very much. Oh, you stream? Yeah, you stream, Mr. Jones. Apparently, .NET stuff. I will be back tomorrow. Thank you very much. Take care, and I'll see you soon. Take care. Bye all.